part where you think very, very quickly, because even though you're an audience, I'd like you to participate. So you've got about 45 seconds to find a way to make this paper make the biggest noise you can imagine. Go. Okay. It's not bad. The secret is that the person who makes the biggest noise, gets to win a copy of my book.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to try as well. Okay? We've all had our turn. My turn. Let me try. Okay. It's all about technique and application. So how's your heart rate doing? Exciting stuff, eh? Right. So this morning I'd like to tell you guys about spiritual maturity development network. It's my side hustle in a sense. It's a registered non-profit organization that looks to achieve a whole bunch of activities or initiatives. And where we are going with Spiritual Maturity Development Network is we're looking to leave the world a better place. We're saying that there's a lot of stuff wrong with the way in which our country is being governed. And we can't go and become politicians and fix our country from the top downwards, because that's reserved for a select few. If you're not in that community, you're not going to make a difference. So we've embraced the concept of fixing our communities from the ground up. So Spiritual Maturity Development Network has basically have 4 individual initiatives that we are currently running or busy developing. The first one is Spiritual Maturity Development Workshops. As a Christian organization, you see that I've poached this quote from our early assessments last week, from our lectures. And it's basically, when it's foggy in the pulpit, it's cloudy in the pew. And what we're saying is that knowledge is power. And if the people who bring the knowledge don't have clarity of perception, that knowledge is not going to reach the ground in a clear way. So the first aspect of Spiritual Maturity Development Network is equipping people to understand what they believe. Not changing what they believe, but to help them understand what they believe. Being a Christian organization, that's the key of our focus. And the extension of that is basically a Christian library for people who would be interested in getting access to Christian literature. The second plan, or the second initiative, is what we call the Outie Leg Up program. For those guys who are out in the street, they're hustling. I'd like you to take just a minute and imagine for a second that you walk outside the gate, you don't have cash, you don't have transport, you don't have a phone, you don't have an ID, you don't have a bank card. You're lost. You are totally lost. So the Outie Lego program goes and it takes those people who are essentially homeless, and we say to them, let's enroll you into our program. We'll take you through a vetting process to make sure that you're not one of those people who are just hustling for a quick fix. And once we've found you to be credible, we say, let us help you to get your ID so that you're becoming employable. Once you have your ID, we'll say, let us help you get your driver's license so that you're employable. Let us help you to write up your CV. Let us help you to apply to the Department of Education for a copy of your matric certificate or your qualifications that are on file with various organizations so that you are employable. So that's the second leg. The third leg is basically the one that I'm currently busy driving and that I'm very, very passionate about. It's trauma debriefing and trauma debriefing development specifically. So all of this excitement has left us with a bit of fun and games. But imagine that your life is in that place where you walk out the gate and you have nothing and you are traumatized by life because life is going to bear down on you. You've got no shelter, no place to stay, no cash, no food, no transport, no bank card, no ID, no employment. You're demoralized, you're broken as a human being. But trauma debriefing goes beyond that because we have lower income or high risk communities, basically social demos areas if you like. Okay? And then Jabula spoke a little bit earlier about this whole concept of Ubuntu, where we need to embrace our societies and make the world a better place. Now, the trauma debriefing does that. What we're saying is we are going to provide a trauma team, which has already been trained up, And on a standby roster, we are going to support frontline or first-line responders in terms of trauma debriefing. Imagine you're a police officer, you're showing up at a situation where there's a car, there's been a collision, the person is trapped in the vehicle, and the vehicle catches a light. There's nothing you can do, so you watch the person burn to death. That's a traumatic experience, hands down, even for a fireman that is a seasoned officer. The issue that we have is policemen often need to deal with trauma. So we focus on frontline responders, but in lower income areas like, for example, Austerville, Wentworth, Meerwent, the South Basin area, which is where we're focusing, we also find that the area is riddled with substance abuse and with domestic violence and gang violence. So trauma is a real thing for those communities. It's so real that Wentworth even have their own court that specifically deals with domestic violence related matters. So trauma debriefing is looking at servicing that particular area as well, but then there's a fourth wing, which is I'm actually a lot more excited about. Our trauma debriefing team will be seen as foreigners because we need to align with the CPF, we need to align with the local police station, so the community is not necessarily going to be willing to receive us. And this is sort of where you guys would need to come in. We are looking to run workshops in those communities where we will go and empower them with basic concepts like arrest the bleed, airway management, burns management, how to save a person who's having an anaphylactic response, so basic first aid training, fire identification or fire prevention identification, so that those communities will understand how they can increase the survivability of their own citizenship whilst they are waiting for an ambulance or for a fire engine. So it's equipping and empowering the community with looking after themselves in that window between where an incident happens and where the emergency services arrive. But then we're going to go one step further. We're going to go into the schools and we are going to equip specifically children from the ages of 6 to 16 with the understanding and the knowledge of what does healthy conflict look like? Because conflict is essential in all relationships, because that's how we get along. But then also, how do we identify what unhealthy conflict looks like? So that the scholar, the learner, can come to his guidance counselor and say, I think my parents are in trouble, we need to get support for my family. And that puts us as an organization in a position where we can prevent domestic violence. And we can prevent gang-related violence by equipping the community to stand up and become a unified voice in a way that the police and the politicians can't. When I'm done, I'm going to hand out a basic little flyer from our organization that you guys can read through and take away and take it home with you. And then my contact details on there. So if you want to become part of the organization or you want to participate in any particular way, please get in touch with us. Any questions? Questions, anyone? Make it a hard one.
No. So with your communities that you're involved with, is it still small communities? Have you approached probably?
We're in that phase now where we are busy setting up a trauma debriefing team. We've just run a course 2 or 3 weeks back where we've qualified 12 trauma debriefers. And as many of those as we can, we're going to slot onto a standby roster so that we will be able to service trauma debriefing call-outs after hours. This morning when I got a call before 8 o'clock, I was called out to go and do a trauma debriefing on a murder scene in Glenwood, where we'll go and support the family. The other thing is as well, I'm so passionate about my dream that even though I have the side hustle, I've also registered with EMS chaplaincy as a registered chaplain. So in terms of the Chaplaincy Association of South Africa, I'm a registered chaplain on top of being a search and rescue specialist and having a side hustle because I feel so strongly about this.
Because I just know someone who just recently had a hectic thing, so that's why I'm asking you.
And so a trauma debriefer. So a trauma debriefer is basically like an
information to that person, because with Zulu guys it's very difficult to.
Yeah. So we're basically like emotional first aiders. Imagine you cut yourself in the kitchen. The first aider stops that bleed and gets you to a hospital so that you don't bleed out. And emotional trauma debriefers do just that. They prevent the damage from getting worse while we refer you to people who are qualified to fix it. Okay, so that's the simplified explanation.
What support do you have for the trauma debriefers? Because if you say like you just went to
so the trauma debriefers, so the trauma debriefers have their own internal mechanisms and support. We also, because we are trauma debriefers, we are connected to a trauma counseling network, and that's our step-up protection plan as well. And we'll also have in-house mechanisms where we'll do collective monthly debriefs And our trauma debriefers will specifically go and do community upliftment initiatives where they will become empowered by empowering the people who need it more. Last question.
Thank you. Can I check do you provide support to certain areas or within KZN? How broad can you go?
The whole issue is about serviceability, supply and demand. And so at the moment we're trying to establish a working model in the South Basin area.
Okay.
Once we have a working model, the ideal would be for us to get more registered trauma debriefers and more registered chaplains on board so that we can take that footprint and duplicate it in every jurisdiction or municipal like area, like ward councillors and stuff like that, into every jurisdictional ward.
Okay.
Thank you. So guys, the solution is part of the people who are empowered already. Without the support of the community who is able, we can't support the community who is not.